So you and everybody else at the company has definitely heard this complaint before, right? It's Salesforce slows down sales and marketing and support and legal and finance, and the list goes on and on and on. And nobody seems to love to use it. You bought it because you thought it would make everybody's life easier. But now you're in this weird position where you're like forcing people to try to use it and update it and keep it relevant. And it just seems like this huge hassle that you're always trying to enforce on every team out there so that your business stays healthy and you can understand what's going on with it. So it's a really common issue that I see when companies are at or near $3 million in ARR. And it's actually just one simple correction we should make and why you're in this position in the first place so that we can get you back on track and make Salesforce be something that's the total opposite. They actually do want to use it. You never have to invite them to update stuff. They're always in there using it for their own jobs. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. Okay. It's kind of the pipe dream here. And we're going to do that without creating more problems. We're going to do that without breaking any existing automations or making the reps in the process hate you for having them use Salesforce. Okay. So who am I? There's a bunch over here to the left. My name is Jordan Nelson. Feel free to read through this. Main call outs here. I share a bunch of what I know over on LinkedIn. I am part of the LinkedIn Top Voice. It's almost like their verified program over there. There's only 0.001% of people on LinkedIn that get this invite only to become a top voice. I've done that with 100K followers. So I share a bunch of my knowledge. I've been doing that for years, over 6 years on LinkedIn. Been a blog author, coach at these other companies. And then the main call out before starting the consulting company, these logos over here, Vercel, Bill.com, Podium, Health Equity. I worked at all those companies, all billion-dollar tech startups before starting my consulting firm. I have those valuations over here. And now what do? I started my own. So after working at these companies, I started my own consulting firm, and we exclusively work with tech companies to help them grow from 3 million to 100 million in ARR, just like I did at those other companies, just like I had to do at Vercel, Podium, Divvy, and Health Equity. And now we are doing the same for these growing tech companies, seeing the same success over and over again. So just want to let you know that so that you understand that the information I'm about to give you is not just coming from Google or ChatGPT. This is something I've had to do for my entire career so far and is proven to work, having worked at all those other companies. All right, so your problem here, why are we in this position in the first place? So I mentioned this at the beginning, but typically, right, you have your teams that just hate Salesforce. So you have usually sales, marketing, and support seem to get all the attention around this phase. These are the people that you're really trying to get up and running, mainly sales. You got your leads going in there, your deals going in there, and then marketing is trying to get interested people into Salesforce. And then support, if you have like support cases coming through, people reaching out with problems, onboarding. So these are kind of like the three main departments that seem to complain the most. But you're also going to have finance and legal and leadership and anybody else that uses Salesforce in the company probably complaining that it doesn't really do what they want it to do. So how they feel right now that becomes a burden for you is that there's just too many screens, there's too much clicking around, there's too much busy work that they have to do, and it really does not provide them value to do what they have to do in their job. And that's understandable. So when this feels like it's homework to them or busy work to them, it didn't actually help them do their job, they're not going to use it. You're not going to use it either. Like if that was part of your job and you were supposed to come in here and fill stuff out after you had your job done, it felt just like a huge waste of time. You would be wondering why your company doesn't hire somebody to just come in and keep the data fresh. Why is that my job when my job is to sell stuff, is to market stuff? And then after I'm done doing all of that, I got to go in here and fill it out. So an example would be, let's think of sales since they're the main person that usually complains about this at this phase. In their job, if they are set up to fill out all this information about the customer, but really that didn't help them sell the deal. They were able to just basically text this guy and email this guy and then sell the deal and get the contract sent. In their eyes, it's like, why do I then need to take a bunch of time to log into Salesforce, put in all this crazy information you've asked of me, the company name and the person and their interests and their hobbies and the ARR and the company website and notes from my calls and who I talked to and the champion and the decision maker, like all of that stuff that was already in their head that they've already handled and taken care of and sold the deal on. They now have to go back and fill this out. A lot of the time, that's how this is set up for them and how it feels. So it's not going to be this situation where it's like, why don't they want to use it because they hate it so much? It's really a signal to you to show you it's just not set up in a way to help them do their job. That's just like the brutal truth of it all. Because in the opposite, especially with sales, if you can find a tool that will help them sell more stuff, they'll use it 100% of the time. I've seen a ton of times where there's tools that IT doesn't want them to use, especially with all this AI stuff out right now, and they'll try to use it anyway because they feel like it's going to help them sell more stuff. So if Salesforce is not this place that they go to and automatically want to update and use, it's a signal to you to say it's really not set up to help them do their job. That goes for marketing and support and legal and finance, everybody else. So this means Salesforce basically becomes obsolete. Okay. There is absolutely no reason to use it because it doesn't actually help anyone do their job. It's only there so leadership can pull a report. And by the way, this isn't going to work either because nobody's updating it to begin with. So you have this giant problem where it's like, we bought this expensive thing. We know we got to kind of use it and it's there to help us with the job. But like, we don't know how to really set it up to make it do that. And nobody really is doing it that way. So what do we do from here? So why this hurts you specifically, if you're watching this, you're likely going to be an operations type of person. So someone in tech ops, whether that's sales manager or a sales operation manager or a RevOps manager or marketing manager, marketing operations manager, someone like that. And this is typically going to hurt you because the data, the forecasts, the reports, all those things that you're trying to build to make the company more efficient and prove that things are working, all of that is pointless because nobody's updating it. So there's basically all this old data in there and you're trying to run stuff, reports in there that doesn't reflect really what the business is doing. So leadership will start asking questions like, why are the numbers wrong? Why don't the reports match? Why is Salesforce always wrong in our opinion? Why do we get in there at all? Because it just doesn't even work. And the person that's going to own that problem, that's all you. That always ends up on your plate specifically. How do I know that? Because I always work with you. When I get called into a company, it might be the CTO that decides on the budget and whether or not they can spend X amount of dollars. But it is you that I usually work with as the person on the day-to-day solving a lot of this pain and trying to help you so that the teams can operate more efficiently. So what happens if we don't fix it, right? So always have that option available. We just don't do anything about it. And if we don't do anything about it, what I see happen is that Salesforce will slowly die. Okay, so you spend all this money, it's going to be a huge headache, and you have to have a CRM. Whether or not you think that's true, I'm going to prove it to you right now. If you don't use Salesforce, what would you do instead? Well, you could go use maybe something like a HubSpot or a Zoho or a Sugar CRM or it's one of these off companies or an AI company that's probably come out with some type of CRM at this point. You'd use some other alternative. If you think that that's going to be better, it's going to be the exact same thing. It just looks different. It's a different UI experience, maybe a little bit of different features. End of the day, it's a CRM. So you're going to put information in there so you can look to see how your business is performing. Answer. So if you bought Salesforce and you think HubSpot's going to make it better, it's not. If you think that not having a CRM is going to make it better, that's going to make it worse because in that situation, you're going to go back to Excel sheets and Google Sheets and you're going to try to write all this stuff down and try to make sure that all this stuff stays organized and nobody edits things and people follow up on stuff. There's just like nothing you can automate doing it that way. Imagine trying to go through a deal flow as a sales rep, managing all your deals in just like a Google Sheet. That's going to be extremely hard to do, extremely hard to find anybody, know who all the names are. It's just not going to work. So no matter what you do, you are typically using some type of CRM. You're either writing it down, you're doing an Excel sheet, you're doing a Google Sheet, or you're using one of these companies, which is like a HubSpot or a Salesforce. So you're always going to use one. All right. So it has to be there to be able to help you organize your business. There's no way of getting around it. So what you don't want to happen is have this thing slowly die. Salesforce is like the cream of the crop. It's the best one that you can buy for a reason. There's all these different types of automations you can do, a huge community, a bunch of people like myself that help you set it up, a ton of documentation out there. So it's a really, really good choice that you've already made to use this. Now, really all we got to fix here is just someone's got to help you give the strategy about how we can actually set this up so it works for your business. That's really just the problem you're having. So reps would stop updating it. Marketing builds their own tracking. Like I said, they're going to try to do Excel or Google Sheets like I've seen. Support's going to try to keep notes on their desks or on sticky notes or something and put them on their computers. I used to see that when I'd be in office. call so-and-so back at this time, put it on their computer. So they're going to go through some stuff like that. All right. So now you have multiple versions of the truth. You have conflicting numbers in meetings that you go to and the forecast that you guys are trying to put together for commission and what we're going to see next quarter as far as revenue goes. All that kind of stuff is going to be totally off, because how are you going to go get 900 different spreadsheets, put them all together, and then convince leadership that this is the number that we're actually going to hit by next quarter? It's just not going to come off that way. And it's going to be extremely taxing for you. So if you think your job right now by having this type of problem is taxing, try doing that without the CRM. It's going to make it 10 times worse. We've helped companies in the past that were a little bit smaller than 3 million. It's not usually our typical person that will help, but when we have, it's even worse, right? Because they haven't even usually bought a CRM at this point, or they're like new to the CRM. And so it's 10 times worse. So you can take my word on that. It's 10 times worse if you don't use this. So leadership is ultimately going to stop trusting this system. When you stop trusting the system, it gets worse. People lose jobs, you get fired, you get laid off, you don't have money coming through as far as revenue goes. So the company eventually declines and dies and goes away. Okay. When leadership stops trusting the system, they're going to stop trusting the owner of the system, typically you. Growth is going to stop, like I said, decisions get delayed, revenue will leak, and eventually you either rebuild everything or you replace the platform, like I said, and technical debt becomes the revenue debt. So it really is just going to make this way worse if we do nothing about it. So we have to fix this. This is a problem that we can't skip. It's not something we can just put on the back burner. It has to be solved. So what do we do about it? There is a solution. It's a very simple solution too. You're going to start with one question. The question is, what helps the rep move faster? Then you're going to design the system around that idea. So you're going to remove fields that don't drive your page layouts, so they help people with their daily tasks. You're going to automate repetitive admin work. You're going to surface the next best action clearly for them. So this doesn't feel like philosophical. I want to give you a concrete example of this to end this presentation on, so you don't feel like you watch this and it's too high level. Okay. Concrete example. Let's take your sales team again. Sales is not going to use this if they don't feel like it's going to help them close a deal. So let's reverse that. How would we do that? Inside of Salesforce, there's going to be a place called opportunities. You're probably familiar with it. This is where you track deals. Inside of there, there's a little progress bar at the top that will have your stages of the deal. If you haven't described or defined as a business what the stages are, that's where you want to start. So what you would say is, how many stages do we have to go through to get someone from interested from marketing to a closed won deal, or we close this deal? And how many steps does that take? Is it we send the contract on the first time we contact them? Do we send it on the second time we contact them? Do we ever negotiate? Do we ever have to review terms and agreements with legal? Do we ever have to get approval for any type of managers? Think through those types of things. Then what we're going to do inside of each one of those stages is we're going to have in that same progress bar at the top that's called the path, there's a drop down, and you can put actual guidance in there for each stage that they go to. So the sales rep that you hire knows exactly what to do. Okay, so the first step would be like, hey, when we first get this lead from marketing, we're going to follow up. These are the main things that we got to collect. We got to collect their first name, their last name, their ARR, where they're located, what industry they're in, what territory they're in. If you do these things, this is then going to help you pitch to them better in the second call, because now we know where they're located, the amount of money they make, the industry they're in, and likely what kind of problems they're having and how our product or service is going to help them solve that. That's going to make the sales rep feel like that was helpful. I'm glad I got that information on the first call. So on the second call, I can transform my sales pitch a little bit better to say the right things to this person. And then in my second call, these are the things I'm going to collect and do. So that way, when I send out the contract on my third call, I'm ready to do that. In legal and finance, it goes a little bit quicker. So I'm going to start asking for things like, who's the decision maker? Who's the champion? I'm going to ask for the billing contact. I'm going to go over pricing with them. I'm going to go over anything as far as terms go, if they can be locked up for 12 months, 6 months, 3 months. Those are the kind of conversations I'm going to have in my second call. I'm going to get that information. I'm going to then put that in Salesforce. That's going to then help me and remind me when I call them or talk to them on the third time to send out my contract so that that goes buttery smooth. And that when they get it, it's all relevant to them. We talked about it. They feel confident. They hopefully approve it really quick. And then legal on our side knows that I got all the billing information. So they're going to approve it really quick. And then I'm going to be able to close this deal out. And that's going to help me solve this in like 3 days versus 30 days. Because if I don't do this in Salesforce, I'm going to have to try to remember all this amongst the 100 other leads that I'm working per day. And I'm just not going to remember how to do that kind of stuff. I'm going to forget, and I'm going to forget details, and I'm going to fumble, and I'm not going to follow up at the right time. And that's going to delay things. And that's going to make them not want to talk to me. And I'm going to have to like wiggle back in to try to get them warm again. So you can kind of see where I'm going here. If we set it up that way for sales, that's going to then propel them to the next step that they take versus, like I just said, trying to feel like they got to remember this all in their head or notes that they're taking or Excel sheets they're trying to run. And it's not going to go smooth. They're not going to follow up at the right time. So they're not going to do the right stuff. And it's going to just make that sales cycle way longer than it needs to be. Take that same example, apply it to every department that you work with. Marketing, it should feel the same. Support should feel the same. Legal should feel the same. Leadership, whatever leadership position you're working with, should feel the same, probably with reports and dashboards. And the best part about working with someone like me is that all those things, if you don't know them, that's what I do day in and day out. That's exactly what I had to build when I worked at these 4 different billion-dollar tech startups before I started this consulting firm. Now, when we work with these consulting firms, the whole point of why they wanted to work with us versus just trying to do this on their own is to answer those questions for them. So you might be thinking, that sounds great. I don't really know what I should be asking or not asking. I might have some ideas, but like I don't really know exactly how to go about doing this, nor technically how to set it up. And that's where we come in, where we can do both. We can help you say, this company that's similar to yours, they're a SaaS business. This is what they sell. This is how they sell it. This is how they designed their sales process. This is what they do to track their marketing efforts. This is what they do to track the cases to prevent churn from their customers. So you can help get guidance from us on that. And then we can also obviously implement it for you. So that's the way you want to do this. Instead of what you're doing now, you're basically right now, you're setting this up to just have it say, all right, here's information. It's after the fact. Hopefully the leadership can now pull a report and get some ideas on how maybe the business is progressing. It does not help the actual workforce do their job, which is a problem. So what we're trying to do is reverse that. So if that sounds interesting to you, click the link in the description below. We can see if we're a good fit for you. If we are, we'll talk through in a discovery session how your business works, and then we'll help you set it up using these strategies and guidances that we've had from all these other tech startups that we've already previously worked with. If that is you, like I said, look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks.